Top Bed Talk.
And it's a great pleasure to introduce John Moore, who is the head of Division of Anaesthesia and Critical Care at Manchester Foundation Trust, but more importantly, the clinical director for cancer, prehab and rehab in Greater Manchester. And those of you in the UK will be aware of the big political changes that are going on in Manchester and the opportunities they have up there. So I'm really looking forward to listening to John. And he also, for those of you at the launch last night, John with Sandy Jack led the exercise activity group for the Macmillan work. So thank you for that, John.
Morning, everyone. So, as Mike said, I've got a couple of jobs up in Manchester, and I was given the title to talk about devolution, revolution in Manchester. And Manchester, placing itself at the moment in the north of England, has got a massive opportunity because of the way we work up there and the opportunities around devolution, which I'll go through with you this morning. The other thing I'd highlight is the work that we're doing. We're using lots of collaborators across the system. And I would ask you, if you're doing work in your area, to reach out to collaborators such as Macmillan, such as your HSN network, which is your academic health science network. Using PQIB as your data resource, how you collect information about your patients, is really an eloquent way of doing that. Also using your universities. UK Active is the gym, is the overarching umbrella organisation for all the gyms in the UK, and a really good collaborator. And also working with other NHS colleagues, working with Southampton University through Sandy particularly has been really helpful with the project, and colleagues in York, Sheffield, Scotland, all around the country. Locally, the way we've designed things, I think it's quite important when you do these collaborations, is to have primary care at the centre of everything you're trying to do. So we have a Macmillan GP called Karen McEwen, who works with us. She's from Stepping Hill. And you'll have a Macmillan GP in your areas where you work, and they're very integral to working things through Macmillan. So I lead as a secondary care provider, as an anaesthetic and ICU consultant, also peri-operative person for the last 12 years. A very important person to the project is Zoe, who is AHP, and she's our programme lead. So she's an OT by background. And again, AHPs, OTs, physios, they're the army within hospitals that deliver prehab. And you need to be working with them. As medics, sometimes we think we know what we need to do with things. We don't always know the answer to all those things. And the other thing is these guys, the gyms. And this will be, I think, a bit of debate today about where we deliver prehab. But if you want to scale prehab across a system, you have to utilise community-based facilities to do it. You won't be able to do it in hospital. And supporting Kirsty and supporting us, as I mentioned, we've got UK Active. The other group is the Faculty of Exercise Medicine. And we'll have exercise physicians, who are people that have doctors who are trained in exercise medicine in your locations, and they're people you can utilise. And we're utilising in Manchester as part of our team to help make the change happen. And we talked about this a lot yesterday, about how you improve recovery from major cancer surgery. And I would encourage you to think about 2-year survival. Macmillan and cancer lives in 2-year survival. And it's about living with and beyond cancer. Lots of patients will continue to live with cancer. So we have to ready them for that life of cancer. And cancer treatments are changing a lot. So patients will go on living because they're going to have chemo, radio, immunotherapy. So we have to prepare them for this long-term journey with cancer. So we have to stop them getting complications and prevent problems with that. And Danny spoke very well yesterday about ERAS Plus and what we're trying to do about improving surgical care in Greater Manchester and around with collaborators. So when you look at our system, we're trying to embed within the system is ERAS Plus across the surgical pathway. Alongside that, as PQIP is collecting the data for patients going through that journey. And then we surround that with community. So very short stay in hospital for most patients, really, when you consider they're spending months of treatment with cancer. So we have to get community around us. So you wrap around community. And changing our direction of travel to look at quality of life and 2-year survivorship rather than focusing on the 30 days. So in Manchester, with the Health Foundation, we've got scale and spread grants. We're trying to push ERAS Plus across our hospitals in GM and working with them, and we have surgery schools in those hospitals now. And as Danny mentioned yesterday, around 5,000 patients have been through surgery school over the last 5 years, which I'm very proud of, and those patients certainly benefit from that programme. But we've taken the leap forward now, and we've said, actually, with colleagues working and the brilliant work that's come out of Canada with Prof. Carley and with Southampton, and ABC, all these other work streams, well, how do we make prehab part of the system? Let's just assume, which we think it is, it's normal practice now. How do we make it part of the system? So a year or so ago, I pitched to GM Cancer and I said, I'd like a transformation bid to support the introduction of prehab for patients in Greater Manchester. And they were persuaded by that. And they've given us £1 million transformation grant to establish prehab within our system, which is an amazing investment in that. So we have to now, in the next 2 years, show that it makes a difference. And that's quite a lot of pressure within 2 years. But we think we can do it. But we have to establish this now, this idea that physical activity, nutrition, smoking, cessation, well-being, medical optimization is normal. It's not what we'd like to do in a few years' time. How do you make a system do it? These guys want to do it. We saw yesterday some amazing talks from patients, and we've talked to patients a lot through the programme, and surgery school for me has been an amazing window into patients going through cancer. 80% of the patients that we see in surgery school have got cancer. They so want to do it, patients. And we talk to patients, it's one of our mosaics, and they present this idea, yes, just tell us what to do, it's part of our care, we will do this, shape us, let us know where we can interact as a partnership. And patients really do see themselves as partners in their own healthcare, particularly in cancer. A cancer diagnosis is a life-changing event for lots of people. But the same as anywhere else, Manchester is still confined by the 62-day target. We have to work within that. We have to demonstrate benefit. And the pathways we've chosen, because of their high numbers and also because of the effects on the patient, are lung, colorectal, and OG. We're already doing work within pancreas, and we'll come back to that at another time, but those three are the main focus for our programme at the moment. You've seen this slide yesterday, but it also helps with surgical risk, because actually the high peak of that is your high-end patients who carry the most risk, and the people really who we should be focusing the most attention, I feel. They're the most frail, they carry the majority of complications, and that's where the morbidity lives, with the long-term social complications as well. And social, we'll talk about, is really important for these patients, because when they leave hospital, there's a massive social implication to their journey, which we don't actually see in hospital, but it's an ongoing problem for them. So I feel we should tailor prehab in that way. And there will be a cost implementation to those people at a universal level who are quite fit, probably us, when we have a cancer diagnosis. We did a different programme, I think, to people who are less fit and will be cheaper to look after. Because to make this business as usual, it's got to be cost effective, and we have to be honest about that when we're trying to do these things. And also the level of supervision we think that patients need will become more intense as the patient is more frail, and also maybe doesn't cope so well with understanding what they need to do. And also I'd suggest the location of where you deliver the prehab changes. Those people at the top probably need to have it based, to begin with, in healthcare, and then we move them to community. So our transformation project, and that number looks bigger every time I see it, is free prehab for 2,000 patients in Greater Manchester. And we're doing it, as I mentioned before, with upper GI, lung, colorectal, moving shortly to head and neck, and then to lung, chemo, radiotherapy. There's a massive opportunity for us within oncology, because currently the oncologists and radiotherapy teams don't measure physiological performance beyond a performance score. So we feel, and working with colleagues around the country, we'd like to evaluate the benefits of prehab, but we first need to understand what we don't know. These patients are quite unwell when they go through their treatment, so let's regularly measure their functional fitness through chemo and radiotherapy. We don't do that. We need to do that. So the point of the talk is talking about how you do it in Manchester. So 2.8 million people, scale of 500 square miles, that's where we're operating at the moment. So how do you deliver prehab in a system like that? Well, we've got three big things helping us in Greater Manchester. The first of it is we're an integrated care system. I'll explain in a second what that means. We have GM Cancer, which is a single entity, which makes a big difference. And finally, we have a GM Active as our partner in the delivery. Healthcare, social care are becoming much more interlinked. Our patients are older. When they go through their treatments, they commonly require a period of interim care in some facility. So social care and healthcare are very much interlinked, becoming more expensive. And what's recognised is you have to take down the barriers in the communication between these areas of the system. Whether it's social, whether it's hospital, whether it's primary care, whether it's community, they all need to be linked up together. And this is why we've got integrated care systems. It takes away the barriers between NHS and local authority organisations. It allows them to be much more coordinated and together. So in the UK at the moment, we have 10 integrated care systems. 2 of them have got devolved budgets, Greater Manchester being one of them. So you have control of your funding and your services, but you're still at the behest of NHS targets. So we can't just do something in Manchester because we fancy doing it. We still have to do what NHS asks us to do, but there's a massive opportunity within this. Also, not to forget, it's harder in the north. It really is. So those are the most deprived areas as of 2010 in the country. Yes, there is a spot over there, which is a deprived area, but that's where the deprived areas are in the country. And similar updated version shows more areas towards Middlesbrough as well. So the north has got more deprived areas. 1 in 5 patients in Manchester live in one of the most deprived areas of the country. It's 20% of our population. More than 2/3 of our patients are dying early because of alcohol, because of obesity, because of smoking, poor air quality. You probably hear about that on the news. We have a massive number of patients that are invisible to the system, that only present with an emergency because of health literacy, because of not understanding, because of poor education. So you can see some of the issues that we have. But integrated care systems will help with that. So also we have GM cancer. In 2015, it was recognised that rather than having small areas of cancer ownership, it would be much better to have a single lead organisation looking after an entire region, and that's a cancer vanguard. So in Manchester, we have GM Cancer, similar organisational change with UCL and Royal Marsden. We now have a cancer board, which commissioners and providers come together to agree cancer care, which is a much more efficient way of working the system. And in Manchester, we have our boards, which feed up to the GM Cancer Board, which feeds up to our Health and Care Partnership, which is our ICS. And each of these cancer boards, whether it's urology or OG or HPB, if something is decided in that board, it must be delivered across the whole system. It's not at the behest of one hospital, so we're not going to do that. The board should say to the hospital, you should deliver this because it's what we're going to do. So I run one of those boards now as a prehab lead, but I'm the only anaesthetist in any of those boards. There's 20 boards. It's run by surgeons and oncologists, and there may be some with us today, very respectful of them. But peri-operative boards like urology, OG, why are there not anaesthetists on those boards? So we'll help change that. So, working with GM Active. Remember, we're not trying to create these guys. That's not what prehab's trying to do in my head. It's trying to take that chap over there and get him fitter. And that's the big thing I think you need to think in your mind. What can we do for that chap over there? This guy will literally run through his operation. He needs to be made the effort for those patients. That's why we need a community-based solution. So across Greater Manchester, these are our activity partners. You know, trying to organise yourself with all those individual organisations would be difficult. So they've come together under one umbrella, which is GM Active, and supported by UK Active, who sit on top of them. So that's an organisational structure that allows us to work with. So me working as GM Cancer with Zoe, we can organise with GM Active to have an SLA agreement. So you will deliver for us this number of thousands of episodes of prehab or rehab. And we can agree KPIs at a structural level, rather than individual hospitals trying to organise it. And they have over 80 facilities, and we're working with them now with 14 evaluation centres. So the prehab setup will be that we have 14 evaluation centres across that 500 square miles. And each patient is within 5 miles of an evaluation centre, which is pretty amazing. And most of them within a couple of miles of where they're having their prehab, which is, again, pretty amazing, isn't it? Just to quote as well, just to reference the support of Manchester Met and also the Faculty of Sports and Exercise Medicine in helping us deliver and design the prehab. So where are we now? Well, we have this pre-phase implementation, classic QI thing, where we talk to people. And we spent time, and I've been pitching to our MDTs in Manchester, there's lots of MDTs to talk to, talking to the surgeons and saying, this is a good idea, we should do this for lung, colorectal and OG. Paying visits to people, designing the system. And we launched on the 25th of April this year, with the design flowing into August 2020. We have a complicated, or not complicated, but we have a full governance structure. And this is important because it gives quality assurance to GMCA to say, well, we are doing things in the right way. Because you could criticise and say, well, how do you know when things are happening in the system? Well, we have a very strong governance support. And also within each of our groups, colorectal, lung, OG, we have chairs which are anaesthetic and surgical colleagues to help us deliver it. So the programme itself, delivered, as I said, through the gyms, It's a supervised exercise program. The supervision, depending on the level of the patient's fitness. The less fit they are, the more supervision they need. As a combination of cardiovascular and muscle strength, there's cardiovascular endurance, which is bike or other types of cardiovascular activity and muscle strengthening, aiming for 40 to 60 minutes. Progressive program, aiming for a minimum of 3 times a week. So how do you know who needs what? So the way that we've designed the system, and this again was a step forward, we had to get the system to say, well, actually, in GM, wherever I am in GM as a patient, if I go to any one of 10 hospitals, I'll have the same evaluation. And that's a big thing, because every hospital does not have CPET. Only 50% of the hospitals in the country have it. Other hospitals, when you talk to them, don't do any dynamic evaluation of patients having major cancer surgery. And you may be alarmed about that, but that's true. That's what happens in the system at the moment. Patients are seen by a surgeon, possibly by an anaesthetist if the surgeon's worried, possibly by a cardiologist if the patient's really bad. Otherwise, let's do the operation. That's not what we want, is it, for our patients? We need to understand their fitness. So a simple way, I'm not saying it's the answer to everything, and this is for lung, is for everyone to undergo an incremental shuttle test at diagnosis, or nearest to diagnosis as possible. That allows us then to sieve into which sort of prehab they get. So the CNSs, the physios in the hospital can say to the patient, right, we're referring you into prehab, this is where you are, this is the sort of program that you'll be getting. And the intensity goes up if you're less fit. Now, there's a group here who are less than 250 metres, and if you know much about lung cancer surgery, less than 250 metres in a shuttle, then it's balanced whether you're going to benefit from the operation or not. So they would then add into that a CPET to help them further define the risk. Within this group, we think we can make people fitter, that might be more suitable for surgery, which is a big step forward with the system. But I think you have to have some triage mechanism early in your system to understand what you're going to do. So patients go through their prehab, they have their operation, and then they go and the prehab can vary depending on how long they have in the pathway. Then they have a recovery period, which is free also, for up to 3 months to 6 months after their operation. So nutrition, we have prehab, it's a multimodal. We have exercise, we have nutrition. The nutrition's been organised by our dietetic colleagues, particularly around OG, because we're aware that OG patients going through prehab would lose weight. So we need to make sure they don't lose weight, so we have lots of support from our dietitians for that. But colorectal, we don't think as much of a problem, but understand that 10% of them will lose weight or be malnourished. So we have to recognise that, we have to point people in the right direction, and we have to have weight monitoring during the programme to safeguard patients as they go through exercise. We're also looking at, with colleagues, about giving patients drinks after I know it's what we do in Canada, we'd like to do also in the UK. So when someone goes to the gym, they have their exercise, we give them a drink half an hour afterwards to recover. That's what you do in the gym, so why don't we do that? Psychosocial, we've trained our staff in the gyms to use the step care model, which allows people very simply to effectively evaluate people and offer support as needed. Beyond level 2, they need some more senior support. And most people, though, can be supported by level 1, level 2 training. And it was a project we called Sage and Tyne in Greater Manchester. The other thing is there's lots of additional resources that we know about in Greater Manchester that we can signpost patients to. This is mental health support that exists already through community. We don't have to reinvent this stuff. So we have a step care model, we have our Sage and Tyne training, which trains our staff, and direct links into local teams, escalation to mental health services as required. So we've got lots of resources we've built for patients and information. We have our referral portal, which is now open for access. We have these measures that we're collecting. We're using a system called Referral, which basically allows us to collect these in the gyms. So we have our physiological, our patient-reported, and our patient experience measures. So the patient is referred following the MDT as early as possible. They go into the gym, they have these evaluations I've just described, they go through the prehab, they have them re-evaluated, they have their operation re-evaluated in the gyms at 4 to 6 weeks, and again at the end of the recovery. And we're collecting this outcome data as we're going along. So where are we now? Well, I'm very proud to say in the last 8 weeks we've had 170 patients referred to the programme in Greater Manchester. More than 93% of people are attending. This isn't a research study, this is people that we haven't primed these people. The patients didn't know we were going to do this. So these are patients that are accepting that this is normal care now. This is an amazing achievement, really. And initial studies, which I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I'll probably get ripped to shreds, but we are seeming to be able to increase functional fitness. Now that's a massive, can you do it? I think we seem to be able to do it. And importantly, we haven't had immediate safety concerns, probably because of the way that we designed the structure, because of triage. We've had some patients that have been said, no, you're too high risk for community. And that's what we would expect. We'd expect patients to be pushed back into us. If they just did everyone, then obviously that would be concerning for us. Only small numbers of people are declining the programme. Someone amazingly got told, you're too fit, which is good, so that's good, but we're saying this is for everybody. So, to summarise, I know I've gone slightly over, we've got a model in Greater Manchester that needs refinement is working, and we'll monitor these outcomes over the next 2 years. Next for us is non-surgical. Let's get into non-surgical. Digital will support scaling. If I'm a universal patient, I would want digital technology to support me going through my prehab programme, and that's what we're going to do. And the big challenge for all of us, particularly in GM, because this transformation budget only lasts for 2 years, is to transform it from transformational to business as usual. Thank you very much.
Lee Majerison here. Thanks for listening to Top Med Talk. Now, before we let you go, it's important that we remind you to subscribe to Top Med Talk. That way you'll never, ever miss another episode. Also, if we could encourage you to join us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, pretty much every single social media platform, we're there. Join us. And finally, check out topmedtalk.com. If you go to our website, you can subscribe to email updates. That way we can always tell you where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and how you can join us. topmedtalk.com and click on the section marked email updates. Finally, Top Med Talk is proud to act as the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about them as well. ebpom.org is their website. That's ebpom.org. And if you go to ebpom.org/meetings, you can find out about some of the wonderful meetings that we attend and cover across the year here on Top Med Talk. That's ebpom.org/meetings.